What did the creepy teacher in your school do? I took orchestra classes when I was in middle school. When I was in 6th grade, our orchestra teacher Mr. S was generally disliked by everyone. He was in his early 60s, and to an 11-year-old, very tall. He was already imposing because of this, but what made it worse was how he treated his female students. One day in class, we were all struggling to play a song correctly. Mr. S became frustrated, and didn't think any of us understood the beat of the song. He looked around the class, saying he needed a volunteer. Everyone became silent, including me, but I had the misfortune of locking eyes with him. He then called my name and waved me up to the front of the room. What happened next was not something anyone was expecting. I picked up my instrument to take up front with me, and he said, "No, leave your instrument. Just you." I was very confused, but did as he said. I walked up to his side, and he instructed me to stand in front of him. At this point, the class was beginning to snicker, and I was just very uncomfortable. "Move closer." I took a small step towards him, and at this point I was too scared to look at his face. All I could see was his buttoned shirt in front of me. He made me walk closer until I was inches from him. Then, he moved my arm up and put my hand in his. He proceeded to make me slow dance with him, for what felt like forever, as he counted the beat. I let go of his hand at one point and tried walking back to my seat, but he grabbed my arm and pulled me back, saying not yet. After this was over, and I went on to my other classes, I learned that in each period of the day, he had chosen a female student to slow dance with him, regardless if the class was struggling to understand the beat. Unfortunately, this was not the end to what felt like unwanted attention from him. He would somehow find me in the hallways, and would try to have talks with me about anything, even though I mostly kept to myself and didn't cause trouble in class. I was freaking 11 at the time. It got to a point that my friends understood how I felt, and knew to say something to me when they saw him. And every time, without fail, he always managed to put his hands on my shoulders when he talked to me, even if I was already backed against a wall. He would look directly at my lips whenever he talked to me, and a few times when we walked past in the hallways, his hand slid across my backside, and once he squeezed it. When he was talking to me in the hallways, he wouldn't let me leave, and I was too scared to say anything. He could find me in a crowd, easily. At the end of the year he went to prison and was exposed as a pedo. A plot twist I saw coming.
I ran away from home after my father gave my room to my sister, and my parents never tried to find me. And now that they found out I'm rich, they found me and demand that I buy a house for her. My sister is the youngest, and unlike me, was planned. This should be an insignificant detail, but the difference in treatment between my sister and me was visible. My parents even treated me well before my sister arrived. But when she was born, everything changed. From then on, suddenly, I could no longer have birthday parties, since my sister's birthday was close to mine, and they couldn't risk not having enough money for her luxurious party. It worsened over time as they stopped giving me gifts altogether. And when someone outside the family gave me a present, they forced me to give it to my sister, simply because she was the youngest, and as the older brother, it was my duty to make her happy. Additionally, I had several other restrictions. I couldn't go out because I had to help my parents take care of my sister 24/7. I couldn't bring friends home because according to them, it might make my sister uncomfortable, and I had to work to help buy gifts and pay for her birthdays. All of this was absurd, and the rest of my family agreed when they found out. Especially my aunt, who argued with my parents for hours, and even made them promise to stop doing all of this to me, which, of course, was a lie. And they continued doing it. My breaking point was when I turned 18, and as soon as I got home, my mom told me I had to empty my room and move my things to the basement because my sister wanted my room. I asked where I was supposed to sleep, and she said she didn't care, and that if I wanted, I could sleep in the basement or on the couch. I tried to argue with my dad, but he just said I should obey my mom and refused to help me. After that, I couldn't take it anymore. In the middle of the night, I gathered as much as I could carry and left. I think my plan at the time was to make my parents sad about my absence and call me back. But of course, they never did. With my salary at the time, I managed to get by. Now you can see the second part by pressing share and more. Part 2. I ran away from home after my father gave my room to my sister, and my parents never tried to find me. And now that they found out I'm rich, they found me and demand that I buy a house for her. I was already able to pay the rent for an apartment, and that's what I did. At first it was sad and lonely because I didn't have any friends, as I was practically forbidden from having a social life. But over time, things got better. I managed to save enough money, and years later, I rented a space to open a snack bar since my hobby at home was cooking. The only thing I could do without my parents complaining. The snack bar was a huge success, so I rented a bigger space and then another. Nowadays I have 9 branches. I'm not a billionaire, far from it, but I can say that I now live a very secure life. However, somehow my parents found out. Probably because I bought a house in the city where I lived, and since they work in real estate, someone must have mentioned that someone with their last name had bought a house. They called to congratulate me, saying that after discovering I had bought the house, they researched more about me and found out about my businesses too. They congratulated me. I found it all very strange, and after all this time, they were just strangers to me, so I just thanked them and planned to hang up. But out of nowhere, they said they would send me some photos of houses my sister was interested in to my phone. I asked what they were talking about, and they said it was obvious that if I had bought a house, the least I could do was buy one for my sister as well. At that moment, all I could do was laugh. I laughed a lot, and they seemed visibly confused. That's when I started to speak. I told them that I didn't care at all about my sister, what she wanted, or what was fair to my parents. They never reached out to me all these years, even knowing that I had nothing when I left. And now they demand that I buy something for my sister, just like they always did before. Before hanging up, I made it clear that I didn't care if they ended up living on the street, and that they shouldn't call me again. But of course they kept calling. I don't answer, and I don't intend to. Honestly, I feel it's the best I can do. I didn't need them all these years, and I know I won't need them now.
What is your biggest fail in the bedroom? My girlfriend is a hardcore Harry Potter fan. Or at least she used to be. I remember during the honeymoon phase of our relationship, she mentioned one of her fantasies was a Harry Potter roleplay situation where she was a professor at Hogwarts that ends up being seduced by one of her students. I didn't know what to do with that information at the time, but I thought it was funny and I never forgot about it. Less than 2 years later, I decided to bring out my inner wizard and figure out how to fulfill the fantasy my girlfriend always wanted. After completing my Harry Potter research, aka rewatching the movies, I called my girlfriend a few days ago and encouraged her to play along and avoid asking questions when she came over that evening. That was it. No spoilers. When she showed up at my flat, I was standing in the lounge wearing a Harry Potter costume and pointing a wand at her. She laughed. I referred to my girlfriend as Professor and asked her if she remembered that spell she taught me during dark arts class that paralyzed people. My girlfriend was still laughing, but she eventually nodded in response to my question. I waved my wand and shouted Petrificus Totalis. My girlfriend struggled to stop laughing, but she managed to get into character and freeze instantly, as per my spell. I literally picked up my motionless girlfriend and put her down on the couch. I proceeded to unclothe her while telling her how much I've always wanted to sleep with a mudblood and pump her full of pure seed. Not gonna lie, I cringed on the inside when I delivered that line because it sounded silly, but then again, I could tell she was into it. It was working. When I was done going down, I waved my wand between her legs and said unimpregnate. I slept with her in my wizard uniform.